Look at me today. We went through that period in Chapo, but here I am a CEO somewhere. Okay, fine, that was during your time. But this is a point where conversations and dialogue ought to be encouraged. So one asks the question then, should we move towards that direction?
To which direction?
Not corporal. Not corporal. Should we go towards a direction where we say there is a problem in these schools, students are raising something, because if you send them to go home because they touched, they wanted to be home anyway. They wanted to be home because perhaps that's where they find there is peace. Should we then have conversations around there is a problem, let's sit, let's find a solution together, not as teachers directing you on what you need to do?
There's a gap that happened and we cannot go back to a conversation about corporal punishment. Globally, it is known to produce very bad results. And some of the tendencies that you're seeing in school now, because corporal punishment, especially when done in home or in school, it destroys trust between you and the child. And so they're not able even to approach you. They treat you as someone who is not approachable. And those are some of the consequences that we are seeing at current. And it produces fear. It can produce fear. It can also produce aggression.
Okay.
So those are very undesirable products of corporal punishment. And internationally and even legally, we cannot go that direction. But when we outlawed corporal punishment in situations like home and in school, for home, we did not need to be guided as to the protocols, because at home I'll deal with you and deal properly. But now at school, the protocols were not very well developed as to what now replaces the corporal punishment. And when the protocols are developed, they're probably just developed on paper as policy, but schools were not supported to implement those protocols, like for guidance and counseling. No one thinks, and the evidence that we have is that even including the capitation budget lines that we are having, there is no single shilling that goes towards that regard of supporting discipline or counseling in schools. So, like you're saying, the CRE teacher used to be that time. Even now, the situation is not any different from school. And now, even the burden for teaching has probably even grown. So that guidance and counseling, we really cannot talk about it as developed. And considering that avenue of corporal punishment is closed up completely, and that is why you see people on social media saying, try and touch one, and then there are these parents who will be flashing car keys and coming and asking, and it is legitimate. Like, I mean, you cannot subject a child to illegal treatment or treatment that has been outlawed, by the law. Because as Ndu said, you do not know the extent to which an irrational person can go with corporal punishment. And clearly, we have lost children. There are children who have died in the hands of people attempting to perform some discipline or something like that. So corporal punishment is closed. But in the closure of it, we owe ourselves a new protocol. How do we then reinforce discipline? How do we correct children? How do we ensure that advising them sufficient? Because sitting under a tree with a child and just talking to them about, do not get me wrong, some Bible verses, are we equating discipline to religion at some point? Because I have a very strong feeling that is the direction that a lot of the correction would go towards, and it is not so. So we actually need experts in schools to be able to talk to children about discipline. It is not everything that can be sorted by religion. That reading a child one or two Bible verses, you want to imagine that you have built in a software in them that will support them to behave positively towards a way. It is honestly not working. And I have said this about the conversation about lesbianism and gayism in our schools, because that's also another button that parents and teachers don't want to touch. The government does not want to touch, but it is happening. In any case, there are some cases you've had the issue being very highly, profiled. We do not know whether it is a truth or we do not know what it is. But the fact that it has been mentioned very, prominently, it gives us the latitude to address it. And here it is the issue. Heads of schools do not know what to do with those situations.
With the lesbianism and homosexuality issues in schools, because they do exist.
The issues exist, they are there, but heads of schools do not know how to deal with it. About 4 years ago, thereabout, the heads of schools were very hard on those children. They used to suspend them. They used to expel them.
They beat them today.
And then here comes a conversation.
Yeah.
That someone is that a child is indisciplined, because that is also part of being indisciplined, does not deny them their right to education. It doesn't deny them their right to education. They must exist in an education institution. So which education institution is that? And how do we as society either support those children how have we defined what do we want? What do we want out of them? The desire of many parents is that we would not want them to go that direction. That's the desire of many parents. So how are parents supported? Because when you suspend that child, this is what happens. They go home. The mother does not know why you have been suspended. They don't know how to assist you. They don't know. They do not even want their preacher to know that is why you were suspended from school. No school wants to touch you, because in this country there's a protocol that for you to transfer from school A to B, you must have a release letter from the school that you came from. So no school will touch you, because you will, the thing you will come and it's like a contagious disease.
Yeah.
You want to come and infect our whole school with. So there's the lack of guidance, and the little guidance that the ministry has tried to perform is going towards religion.